Shalom. This is Adasabatsai 1, returning with the signs of the times, and we are now in part 4, and this part 4 is called As in the Days of Lot, who is Lawat. Now we're going to see what the significance we can glean from and compare the days of Lot, who is Lawat in our language, to our days today, the days that we're living in today, as according to what Hamashiach said to us in his word, taken from Luke chapter 17, verse 26. And as it was in the days of Nach, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given a marriage, until the day that Nach entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise also as it was in the days of Lawat. They did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. So this word planted means to implant or to instill doctrine, to beget or to bring forth. And that's from the root word, to bring forth. Verse 29. But the same day that Lawat went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven, and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed, when he is revealed in the clouds, when he shows his face for the first time in this generation, so that all eyes will see who he is. But before he comes, there are certain things that are going to be going on this earth. Wickedness is going to be compounding. All right? And this is the wickedness that he wants us to understand, as in the days of Nach, which we've already looked at. And now he's also adding the days of Lawat. And we're going to focus our study on Luke chapter 17, verse 28 to 30, to see what it is or what had happened in the days of Lawat that caused Alahayam, Yahawasha'o, Hamashiach, to say, as in the days of Lawat, so it shall be in the day when he is revealed. How much more evil could this earth face and endure before judgment comes? We know in the days of Nach, Alahayam Yahweh sent the flood to destroy the giants, the Nephilim, offspring of the fallen angels. Well, the Nephilim were the offspring of the fallen angels and the daughters of men. And they came back after the flood. So let's see what we can glean from the days of Lawat and how it can be compared to our days today. Because we're all waiting and watching for the glorious return of Hamashiach to regather us. And these are the events that he is speaking about, that once we see them taking place, know that our redemption draws nigh. Keep looking up, folks. Hamashiach compared another past event in our forefathers' history to that of the end times, and those were the days of Lawat. In the days of Nach, we see that the earth was so wicked and vile and abominable before Alahayam Yahweh that he sent his judgment in the form of a great flood upon the entire earth to cleanse it of its wickedness. Now we're seeing another judgment set against a group of cities called Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar. Instead of water, Alahayam Yahweh sent fire and brimstone to destroy Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim. Zoar barely escaped. Why did he send his judgment against these cities? Let's see. Let's find out. Let's start with Barashayah, chapter 13, verse 10. This is taken from the book of Genesis, chapter 13, verse 10. And Lawat lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Yarden, that it was well watered everywhere, before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of Yahweh, like the land of Mizraim, as you come into Zoar. So it seems like these cities were beautiful. They were compared to the garden of Yahweh, talking about the garden of Odan. They were lush and green and bountiful. Verse 11. Then Lawat shows him all the plain of Yarden. And Lawat journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Abaraham dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lawat dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before Yahweh exceedingly. So a little bit of a backdrop for this particular scripture. When Abaraham was called out of Ur, he brought with him his brother's son, whose name was Lawat. Abraham was a very wealthy man, wealthy in flocks and herds, and so was Lawat. And it came a time when their herdsmen, the herdsmen of Abraham and the herdsmen of Lawat, were fighting amongst each other over the land and the water and what have you, because their flocks and herds were so great, the land could not contain them both. So there were conflicts amongst the herdsmen. So Abraham said, let not there be any more conflict amongst us. Look around. There's a lot of land. You choose where you want to go. And where you have chosen, I will take the opposite. So this is when Lawat lifted up his eyes and he saw the plain of Yarden, which is Jordan, by the way, and saw that it was lush, well watered, and green, and beautiful. So he chose to go east towards the plain of Yarden. Abraham chose what was left, which would be the west, the land of Canaan, which was dry, which didn't look like much. It did not look like much. But as we can tell from the following stories that occurred, and rather than saying stories, let's talk about events. There were events that occurred that showed us that Abraham chose correctly, because Lawat chose what appealed to his eyes, what appealed to his logic. All right? What seemed logical in his mind? He had a lot of herds, flocks, so he wanted the best for them so that they can continue to be bountiful for him. So he chose the green, lush valley of Yarden, which were made up of 5 cities. He was not concerned with the fact that the people of Sodom were exceedingly wicked. No, that was not even a thought on his mind. He saw the greenness, he wanted it, he took it. And then between the fact that he was kidnapped by the five kings, him and his possessions, that would have clicked in his brain that, hey, I think I made the wrong choice here. But he stuck by his guns. He decided, I'm going to stay here. Come what may. I was kidnapped, nearly killed. My family, everything were all taken from me. But I'm still going to stay here in this wretched city. It was Abraham who had to come and rescue Lawat from the five kings. All right. Lawat left Ur with Abaraham, his uncle, or Abaraham, his uncle, and grew wealthy with flocks and herds, just like Abaraham, who was also rich with flocks and herds, so much so that the land could not contain them both. There was strife amongst their herdsmen, and so Abaraham told Lawat to choose which direction he would take his flocks, while he, Abaraham, would go in the opposite direction. This they did to keep the peace. Lawat chose the plain of Yarden because it was well watered, green, and lush, which would certainly help his flocks, his herds, and his flocks to flourish even more. Abraham, on the other hand, was left with the expanse of the wilderness of Canaan. It was by Lawat's choice that he and his family were living in Sodom, a city that was filled with wickedness. He overlooked the wickedness because he saw what his eyes wanted to see, the greenness and the lushness of Sodom, the potential to become very wealthy. He was already wealthy, but he wanted more wealth. All Lawat saw when he looked at the plain of Yarden was its potential for being a great benefit for him and his possessions. He never even considered the wickedness within the city until it was too late. Let's continue on with chapter 18 of the same Abaraham, verse 20. And Yahweh said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. Now, before we move on, the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah did not come from the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. No, it was not. It did not come from them. They were not the ones crying out to heaven for help. All right. Verse 22. And the men turned their faces from there and went towards Sodom. But Abaraham stood yet before Yahweh. And Abaraham drew near and said, will you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure, there be 50 righteous within the city. Will you also destroy and spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from you to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from you. Shall not the judge of the whole earth do right? And Yahweh said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. Abraham once again was intervening and interceding on Lawat's behalf. He knew what Alahayam, Yahweh, had intended to do, which is to destroy the city. He told him, I'm going to go and destroy these cities. Abraham knew that his nephew and his family were living in the city. So therefore, he was interceding on his behalf. And just for a record, there were three people that approached Abraham in the wilderness of Canaan. It was during this time that he was told he was going to have a son by Sarah. And the main angel that spoke was called the angel of Yahweh. That person was Hamashiach before he came on the earth in the flesh form, being born of a woman. But this was his title when he walked on the earth, to be like an angel, to deliver his father's wishes, his commands, his judgments. So it was him that Abraham was speaking to. He was accompanied by two angels. If you notice, later on, he is going to he is not going to join the two angels when they go into Sodom, but he will be witnessing what is happening, what was going to happen. He was going to witness it through these two angels and perform the judgment through these two angels. The whole idea is to understand that Alahayam Yahweh came to Abaraham to speak to him concerning this matter. Why? Because he called him a friend. He also knew that Lawat was in the city. And he gave Abaraham an opportunity to intercede on behalf of his nephew. And Abraham asked him if there were 50 people in this city, will you destroy it along with the 50 righteous in the city? And he said, no, if there are 50 righteous people in the city, I will not destroy it. Then he said, peradventure, what if there were less 5 people, 45? Then he kept whittling down the numbers until he reached 10. So that's where we're going to pick it up from verse 32. I didn't want to include a whole conversation, just this important part, because there is something that we need to understand. Alahayam Yahweh does not want to destroy people. He does not want to destroy cities. He doesn't want to destroy this world. But because of wickedness that is compounded, he has no choice but to destroy, to prevent it from completely annihilating everything that he had created. Is keeping wickedness in check until the time will come when he will completely eradicate evil from off the face of this earth. That's why throughout history, he stepped in to destroy, because wickedness was compounding too greatly, and it was going to annihilate and totally corrupt everything that he created. He didn't want that. This was his way of keeping evil in check. In Nach's days, when you had the Nephilim with their technology and their splicing of genetic material and creating all manner of wickedness and abominations, and furthermore contaminating the bloodline of the people that he created, he said, enough is enough. I'm going to preserve 8 souls and destroy the rest, and start fresh from those 8 souls along with the animals that he also preserved. And now we're seeing here that once again judgment is coming to 5 cities because of their wickedness and what they were doing. He is putting these cities, when he destroyed them, he's putting them in check. He's putting evil, wickedness, the works of the Nephilim in check. So that they have to start all over again. Verse 32. And he said, "Oh, let Adawan be angry." Notice he called him Adawan because he was speaking to Hamashiach. "Peradventure 10 shall be found there." And he said, "I will not destroy it for 10's sake," meaning 10 people's sake, 10 righteous people's sake. And Yahweh went his way as soon as he had left communion with Abaraham. And Abraham returned to his place. Now I know it says here in verse 33 that Yahweh went his way, but Hamashiach came to be the representative of Yahweh, his father. Yahweh also sends angels to represent him. He sends his prophets to speak on behalf of him. This is the way how Yahweh is. If you understand who Yahweh is, he is spirit. And he communes with us through his son, through Ruach HaKadosh, through his prophets, through his servants. He himself does not leave the heavenly realm, but he sends his spirit or he sends his son. All right? But they're acting on behalf of him. There were particular periods of time where Alahayam stepped in to bring judgment against nations or cities, or in the case of Nach, the entire earth. He does this when wickedness exceeds his boundaries. It is because of the Nephilim influence on this earth that wrought wickedness and abominations, whether in the days of Nach, the building of the Tower of Babel after the flood, the wickedness of Nineveh, the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah and the other 3 cities, and the wickedness of nations that fought against Yashraal to try to destroy our forefathers, to name a few. All this evil is done either by the offspring of the Nephilim or by demonic possession, by the evil spirits of the Nephilim, or by strong Nephilim demonic influence. We can always know which of these categories mankind has fallen into by the judgments of Yahweh. Alahayam has boundaries as to how far he will permit these evil spirits and the fallen, speaking of the fallen angels and even the Nephilim themselves, because they're here. Some of them survived the flood. I told you in parts 1 and 2 that they went through the portal and they hid in another dimension until it was safe to come back. That's why they were Nephilim after the flood. So these are the fallen, along with the fallen angels, to go in their evil agendas or to carry out their evil agendas. In the case of today, Alahayam is still restricting these evil spirits. But we have noticed their depths of depravity is scooping lower than ever before. Why? Because this is their final showdown, and this will be the ending of their evil reign on the earth. In the meantime, Alahayam is permitting them a certain extent of reign to sift his people Yashraal, the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. and the other nations on this earth. So everyone on this earth are being sifted by the wickedness and the influence of the Nephilim, whether they will be influenced to do what they're suggesting to do, or will you allow them to come and possess you, to take over your body? Either way, you become controlled by them. And then the next step will be to rot all the abominations that you see their agents are doing. You're following to suit. They say to walk around naked, you want to walk around naked. They say to have relations with everything that crosses your path, you go ahead and do it. Anything that crosses your path, whether it's even an animal, you go ahead and do it. Because you are either possessed by these evil spirits or you are greatly influenced by them. And then they go one step further, because it's not sufficient to possess or to control through influence. Now they want you to become the abomination by mingling your bloodline with theirs. Yahweh destroyed everything on the earth in the days of Nach because of the Nephilim, the fallen angels, and their fallen fathers' wickedness on the earth. He destroyed everything with water. Yahweh overthrew the Tower of Babel and scattered the people because of their intent to storm the heavens. They were influenced by the Nephilim spirits to do this thing. Alahayam did not destroy these people, only fouled their plans by taking their one language and replacing it with 70 other languages. Alahayam overthrew Nineveh because of its wickedness. Nevertheless, when the people heard about their judgment, they fasted and prayed. Alahayam stayed his judgment until later because the people turned their hearts, minds, and their deeds around. Later on, he did send his judgment as they returned to their wickedness. They were influenced by evil spirits to be evil. Hence the reason why he spared them the first time. The Nephilim of itself will never consent to fasting and praying for forgiveness. Never, ever. And now these cities in the plain of Jordan or Yaradan were utterly destroyed with fire and brimstone because the people of these cities, especially 4 out of the 5, were abominable. This was because these people were the offspring of the Nephilim, meaning that they had Nephilim bloodline. And how can we know that they had Nephilim bloodline? Based on the fact that Alahayam Yahweh sent his son and 2 other angels down to the earth to judge it and to destroy it. That's how we know. He only destroys when their corruption exceeds his boundaries. Yes, he allowed some of the giants to remain on the earth, but at certain points of time, he sends judgments against them to destroy them. When he sent his 12 tribes, Yashra'al, to take over the land of Canaan where the giants were residing. He said to utterly destroy them because they were an abomination. He says, spare them not, neither mingle with them, but destroy them and everything that they've built up in regards to gods, by the way, not the buildings or the cities, but they had raised up idols in the land, made out of wood and stone and metal and what have you. He said, destroy their groves, destroy their high places. Wherever they worship, destroy it with fire. That's when our people were to go into the land, the promised land that was given to them. He said, destroy them and their images that they created, their gods that they made. He wanted them gone. And that's how we know that the people in Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim had Nephilim bloodline. Maybe even Zoar. But Zoar was the smallest of all the cities, and it was the one city that Lawat and his family were going to run to. And Alahayam said, okay. But the other point that I wanted to address is the fact that Abaraham said, if there were 10 people in that city, would you still destroy it? Alahayam, Yahweh could not find 10 people. Lawat went to the city with his 2 daughters and his wife. That's 4. His 2 daughters were married, got married there in the city. That's 7. Actually, no. 6. That's 6 people. He also went there with herdsmen. What happened to them? What happened to his herdsmen? Okay, we're going to come back to that. All right. We have discovered in the study called As in the Days of Nach that the Nephilim have insatiable appetites for violence, blood, death, destruction, intercourse, and anything evil. This is their nature that is inherent. Hence, there is no salvation for them or their offspring. They lack the abilities to have remorse, sympathy, empathy, compassion, or even love and forgiveness. Therefore, the cry from Sodom and Gomorrah arose to Alahayam Yahweh because of their depravity. The cry that came to the ears of Yahweh did not come from the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, but rather the people that they preyed on, the people that ventured in to their cities because their cities look like pleasant places. But it was a lure. Do you know there's a fish called the anchorfish found in the deepest part of the ocean? I think that's what it's called, the anchorfish. And it has a light, and it's attached to something. It looks like an antenna that comes from the head of the fish, and it extends before the fish. Because where this fish dwells, it is darkness. So this light that this anchorfish puts out draws other fish to this light, and this fish and this anchorfish prey on these other little fish or fishes or what have you that is drawn to its light, and that's how it gets its meals. It's a bait. It's a way to draw the unknowing into its presence so that it can attack and eat, destroy, what have you. This is what this anchorfish does. And the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, they're the same way. They created their cities to look from the outside. From the outside, their cities look very appealing. They look like well-watered gardens. So people naturally will want to go there. And when people venture in to their gates, then these people are preyed upon mercilessly. Those are the cries that cry out to Alahayam, Yahweh. They were unbelievably wicked. We're going to see more, don't worry. Hamashiach was the angel of Yahweh, accompanied by two other angels who first approached Abaraham to announce Yahweh's intent on destroying these cities. Abraham knew that Lawat and his family were living in one of those cities, and once again he stepped in to intercede on their behalf. Finally, it was settled that if there were 10 righteous souls in the city, that it would not be destroyed. We know the outcome of this historical event, as not even 5 righteous people were found in all those cities combined. Let's look at Barashayah, the book of Genesis, chapter 19, verse 1. And there came 2 angels to Sodom at evening. So there were 3 that approached Abraham, and now there are only 2. So 1 left. And that would have been the angel of Yahweh, who was Hamashiach. But he sent ahead the 2 other angels to carry out Alahayam, Yahweh's command. And Lawat sat at the gate of Sodom. He was not at home relaxing with his family, and his family were not anywhere with him there at the gate. Lawat was sitting at the gate. Why? Because after spending so much time in this city, first he was kidnapped, then when he was returned with his possessions and his herds and what have you, now he had to endure more wickedness. All right? He had to endure more wickedness. When we go to 2 Peter, we're going to see that even their filthy conversations grieved the heart of Lawat. So he sat at the gate. Imagine, he left he was with his uncle, who was a righteous man, Abraham, then to enter into a place that he thought was going to be a blessing, turned out to be a curse. Kidnapped, and now to come and endure even more wickedness, to see the wickedness that was going on in the city. I believe at this point of time, Lawat had lost everything. His herdsmen were gone. So were his herds and his flocks, all gone. He came to the city, a very wealthy man, and he left with nothing. And he already had lost it all. That's the reason why he was sitting at the gate, contemplating his fate, contemplating what was going to happen next for him. He was outside the city. He didn't want anything to do with what was going on inside the city. He even left his wife and children to sit at the gate. And Lawat, seeing them, and he bowed himself with his face towards the ground. And he said, "Behold now, my Adawan, turn in." So this Adawan, it just means a mark of respect. Master. Turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and you shall rise up early and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house. And he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. Now there was a reason why Lawat insisted that these two men, which he perceived to be righteous, to be holy men, he insisted that they come and stay with him, because he knew what the vile and abominable men in that city would do to them. He knew there was something unusual about these two men. And this is the reason why he insisted that they come and stay at his house. Don't stay in the city in the open. At night, they were prey. They would have been prayed for the taking. Not that they would have been taken, no, because they came to bring judgment. But this also showed us that Lawat was of a different mindset than these people in the city. And these were the events that had played out to preserve Lawat and his family alive, all because of Abaraham. Because they didn't have to come into the city, but they did. They come to rescue them, meaning Lawat and his family. Verse 4. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house around, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lawat and said unto him, Where are the men who came in to you this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. And that knowing there is meant, what they had meant there was speaking of intercourse. And for the record, the word Sodom also is the root word for sodomy. And that is an abomination in the eyes of Alahayam. So they were going to know these two men. All these people, these men, old and young together, wanted to have their time with these two men. This was the cry that went up to Alahayam Yahweh. Men would enter into the city, and a large group of them, the men, young and old, will gang rape these strangers. And it was the cry of the strangers that were heard by Alahayam Yahweh, because they gang raped them to the point of death. They were merciless. That's why I said they were Nephilim bloodline. They had Nephilim bloodline. Lawat was sitting at the gate of the city because he was grieved by the debaucheries and wickedness in the city. Imagine only one person in all this city that was grieved by the evil. Where was his wife? Where were his daughters? Therefore, when Abaraham asked Alahayam if he would destroy the city if at least 10 righteous people were found, we see clearly that only one person amidst All these people were deeply affected by the depravity of the inhabitants of Sodom. And that's why I mentioned before the herdsmen. What happened to his herdsmen? They were men. And obviously, they either were destroyed or they joined in the wickedness. But they were no longer with Lawat. The same herdsmen that were fighting with Abraham's herdsmen because there were too many, now there were none. When Lawat saw the strangers approaching, he would have known that they were not the usual travelers, because he would have sensed that he's been around Abraham long enough to get some sort of influence, spiritual influence from Abraham. He also knew that the men in the city would have tried their usual evil deeds on these men if the angels had remained in the street. How did the men of the city discover the arrival of these two angels? Could only mean that they had watchers for any new travelers that entered into the city. These were lustful, insatiable, and wicked men of Sodom. That's why I said, like the anchorfish, they baited their cities. They used their cities' appearance as bait, and they had watchers to let them know when fresh blood came into the city. Second Peter chapter 2 verse 6. And turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an example unto those that after should live unrighteously, and delivered just what? Vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. For that righteous man dwelling among them, in seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. That's what they were doing. Unlawful deeds. Sodomizing, killing, eating and drinking human flesh. That's what the eating and drinking was all about. Let's go back to Luke chapter 17. They eat, they drank. You think they were eating bread and drinking wine? No. The same people they killed were the same people they ate and drank their blood. I said they were vile people, insatiable appetites. They were wicked. We're going to get back to bought and sold and planted later on. But this is what these wicked people were doing. They were abominable. They were exceeding the limits of wickedness on the earth. All right. Let's look at, we're going to continue on now, verse 6 of the same Abaraham, chapter 19. And Lawat went out at the door unto them and shut the door after them, meaning shut the door after him, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold, now I have two daughters, which have not known man, meaning they were virgins. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do to them as it is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing. For therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. And they said, These are the men of Sodom, stand back. And they said again, This one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be a judge and he will needs be a judge. Now will we deal worse with you than with them. So in other words, he's saying, you come into our city and you telling us what to do. You better get out of the way, son, before we do to you worse than what we're going to do to those two men. And that's a question here. How come Lawat was not affected by these creatures? How come they never approached him on this level? Again, the favor of Alahayam upon Lawat because of Abaraham. They couldn't touch him. Could not. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lawat, and came near to break the door. But the men put forth their hand, meaning the angels, and pulled Lawat into the house to them and shut the door. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, small, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. So not only were they struck with blindness, they removed the door. They couldn't find a door because there was no door to be found. So they were feeling all around the house looking for a door that was no longer there. And they were so driven by lust that they wore themselves out trying to find this door, because despite the fact that they were blind as bats, they still wanted to rape these men. That's how vile they were. That's how we know that they had Nephilim bloodline. They were wicked. Verse 12. And the men said unto Lawat, have you here any besides son-in-law, and your sons and your daughters, and whatsoever you have in the city? Bring them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxen great before the face of Yahweh, and Yahweh has sent us to destroy it. So they came to bring judgment. He didn't even send a prophet. He sent angels, because they were so vile, so violent, so wicked, so evil. Verse 14. And Lawat went out and spoke unto his sons-in-law, who married his daughters, and said, up, get you out of this place, for Yahweh will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. And when the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lawat, saying, arise, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the iniquity of the city. Meaning you're going up in flames along with everybody else if you don't hurry up and get out. Imagine, he went to his two sons-in-law to tell them, come, you need to come out with us. Otherwise, the city is going to be destroyed with you in it. And they mocked him. Just like the people in Nach's time when he preached righteousness to them, warning them of the flood, they mocked him. This is the nature of those who have the Nephilim bloodline. This is their nature. The sons-in-law, imagine they were married to his two daughters, yet his two daughters were still virgins. So they were married only because, for the sake of marriage, in the sense of, okay, we had a ceremony and that's it. But the marriage was never consummated. So that gives you another idea about these two men that married his two daughters. That they were just like the people in Sodom and Gomorrah. And the question would be, if that was their lifestyle, Why did they marry the two daughters of Lawat? We'll get to that in a minute. Verse 16. While he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand and upon the hand of his wife and upon the hand of his two daughters. The men laid hold upon his hand and upon the hand of his wife and upon the hand of his two daughters, Yahweh being merciful unto him. And they brought him forth and set him outside the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, Escape for your life, look not behind you, neither stay you in all the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest you be consumed. So once again, we come to the mountain. We come to the mountain. Alahayam only deals with mountains. So here, Alahayam is telling Lawat through his angels, run to the mountain. When the ark rested after the flood, where did it rest? On a mountain. Let's see what Lawat says or said. Verse 18. And Lawat said unto them, O not so, my Adawan. Behold, now your servant have found grace in your sight, and you have magnified your mercy, which you have shown unto me in saving my life, and I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me and I die. Behold, now this city is near to flee unto, and it is a little one. This is Zoar. Okay? Let me escape there. Is it not a little one? So he figured it's a little one, so they weren't doing as bad as Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim. He figured they're small, so their deeds are going to be small. But it's not about big deeds or little deeds, it's just wickedness. It's all wickedness. He's instructed to go to the mountain, but instead of going to the mountain, he'd rather go to another city that is just like the other four. He can't give it up. At this point of time, even though we saw in the book of Peter, who calls him just Lot or just Lawat or a righteous man, already the evils of Sodom and Gomorrah was starting to infiltrate him. All right? He couldn't give it up. As bad as things were for him while he was living in the city, he still did not leave. He could have gone back to his uncle, taken his wife and two daughters with him, asked for help. What have you? Leave and go to another city and start all over again. What have you? But no, he sat at the gate of Sodom. And now he is told to flee and go to the mountain where he can start fresh all over again. He didn't have any flocks with him anymore, no herds, no nothing. Just him, his wife, and two daughters. Not even his sons-in-law came with him. But he did not want to go up the mountain. He wanted to stay in the valley where there was corruption. Let's read on. Verse 21. Well, let's continue on. Oh, let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. He was afraid to go up the mountain because already in his heart, a little of Sodom was seeping in. And we know a little leaven leavens the whole bunch. A little rottenness rottens the whole bunch. He said one bad apple, it corrupts the rest. All right? So he already was starting to feel in his heart that was not capable of going up to the mountain. All he had within his grasp was to stay in the valley where he thought, even to this point of time, he still thought he could make it in the valley. Yes, in the end, he did go up to the mountain, but it was already too late. Whatever was the crossroad that he came to, that he was being led away from, utter corruption to go now to the mountain. But he decided, no, 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 I want to go and stay in the valley, stay in Zoar. So now wickedness took root because of this. You're going to see it. You're going to see it. At this point of time, even when he was defending the two angels, wickedness was at the door of his heart. And if he had accepted the command and gone up the mountain with his wife and daughters, then the next thing that occurred would not have occurred. But it was the fact that he left and he went to Zoar and then decided, you know what? I should have listened to the angels. I'm going to go now to the mountain. It was too late. It was too late. Let's read on. Verse 21. And he said unto him, see, I have accepted you concerning this thing also, that I will not overthrow this city for which you have spoken. Haste you, escape, therefore I cannot do anything till you go there. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. So just like Nach, Alahayam could not, or would not, had sent the flood until Nach and his family and the animals were secured, sealed in the ark. So is the same thing with Lawat. They were not going to bring about the judgment of fire and brimstone until they were safely away from the cities. Verse 23. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lawat entered into Zoar. Then Yahweh rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from Yahweh out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and that which grew upon the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. The wife of Lawat disobeyed and looked back at the city. I'm going to come back to that. Verse 27. And Abaraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before Yahweh. And he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain and beheld. And lo, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass when Alahayam destroyed the cities of the plain that Alahayam remembered Abaraham and sent Lawat out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lawat dwelt. So it was because of Abaraham that Lawat was spared, not of anything that he had done, because he chose the city. And he remained in the city even after he was kidnapped. He remained in the city. He did not decide to go anywhere else because he thought he could make his fortune there. And this is a clear cry for us today. We choose to go places where we have no calling going to because we want to make a living. We want to become wealthy. We indulge in things that we're not supposed to indulge in because we think that this one indulgence is going to cause me to become very wealthy, to become prosperous. But Hamashiach said, what will it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? Lawat lost his soul. in Zoar. He was rescued in Sodom. He decided not to go to the mountain. He went to Zoar instead, and he lost his soul there. He lost everything in Sodom and Gomorrah. Then he lost his wife, and now he lost himself. Now we can answer the same questions as we did for the days of Nach. What caused Alahayam Yahweh to become so angry with Sodom and the other cities that he condemned it? As we have read the account of what took place, it leaves little to the imagination to figure out what abominations took place during the days of Lawat. The men of Sodom and the other cities were extraordinarily wicked, even to the point of being beastly. This could only mean one thing, that these men were of the Nephilim bloodline, hence the reason why they were predatorial, animalistic, and debauched. They preyed on victims that wandered into their cities for shelter. Then they mercilessly gang raped them until they expired. And even after they expired, they ate them. That's the eating and the drinking. Lawat knew that this was what these men had done in the past, and so when he invited the angels to stay with him, he refused to let these wicked men of Sodom get their hands on his guests, but offered up his daughters instead. The wicked men of Sodom did not even consider the offer, as they were lusting after the flesh of men and not women. Again, typical Nephilim bloodline. They had no desires for women. They only had desires for men. So how did their population grow in the cities? We'll see that in a minute. This supports the fact that these men were of the Nephilim bloodline. They were anything but normal men. Not only were their deeds vile, but their conversations were just as vile. So let's look at, again, we had looked at Luke chapter 17, verse 28. Likewise, also as it was in the days of Lawat, they did eat, they drank, that's human blood, human flesh. They bought, they sold, they planted, which means to implant or instill doctrine, beget, bring forth, and that's from the root word, and they built. What were they building? All right. This leads us to understand a few things concerning these 5 cities. They were cities where people sought after their kind, meaning the Sodomites. So other Sodomites, other people like them, sought after these cities. That's how their populations grew. Like I said, the herdsmen that Lawat had, maybe they were all killed, maybe not. But who didn't kill joined. They joined. Because don't forget where Lawat came from. He came from Ur. Because they themselves, the seekers, were of the same bloodline or easily influenced to be like them. That's another thing too. Influenced through their doctrine, their pagan ways, their putrefied doctrines, and also possession by demonic spirits. And or they were strangers that happened to wander into the cities, not interested in their vile lifestyle. But as these cities appeared lush and green, even to be like the Garden of Odan, these strangers would have thought these cities were good to establish oneself, just like what Lawat thought. So that's why I compared the 5 cities to be like like the anchorfish. They lured people through appearance, the appearance of being lush and green and bountiful and beautiful. I can go there and I can certainly make a life there. I have 2 sheep and 2 goats. I know because of the lushness of the cities and the lands around them that my sheep and my goats are going to grow and multiply and become fat. But little did they know that it was all a lure to cause people to want to come into the city so that they can prey on them. All right? This is how they get people to come to the cities. And let's read on. And then there were strangers that were just passing through seeking shelter for the night. The men of these wicked cities lured in the strangers by the greenness of Sodom and preyed on them for their evil delight and or to indoctrinate them to be like them. When Hamashiach spoke about these Sodomites buying and selling, it was people that they bought and sold for their own evil deeds. So they capture these people, they bought, they sold them, they do whatever manner of wickedness they wanted to do with these poor people that wandered in. As the buying and selling. The Sodomites built their city on the blood of the innocent and pure wickedness. That's the building. They built it to become a lure, to draw in people, and then they built it spiritually with wickedness and the blood of the innocent. And the more blood they shed, the more lustful they became, because that's the nature of Nephilim. And they would have had their own gods that they would offer up some of these blood sacrifices to. And the same gods that they offer up to would be the fathers of these same fallen creatures, the Nephilim. We're going to do a study. This is going to be part 5, and it's called the Nephilim. We're going to take a good look at these creatures. They're still around today, and we're still seeing their evil influence on this world today. All the wickedness that you see happening in this world can only be explained by one thing: they live. The bloodline is here. It never left the earth. We know that this indoctrination and influence of wickedness infiltrated Lawat's household. They showed Sodom's great evil influence. That's why he said they planted what? Meaning they instilled their evil doctrines, their evil ways, their great influence. They were so evil that the evil was like a cancer. It spread from one person to another by breathing on them. You breathe on someone from Sodom, breathes on you, you become evil just like them. That's how wicked they were. The daughters of Lawat were married, yet they were still virgins, which meant that their husbands did not lie with them. Why? Because they, the husbands, were already indoctrinated and greatly influenced by the wickedness of Sodom. And I would even go as far to say that they had Nephilim bloodline. But they were probably the mildest of them all. But they still loved the city so much. And what was going on there, it gave them a certain amount of delight to witness the wickedness that was going on in the city. Same thing with the wife of Lawat. We're going to get to her soon. Because the sons-in-law of Lawat were Sodomites. They had no use for women, and yet they married these two women. Why? Let's read on. This is the planting that Yahweh spoke about. These sons-in-law of Lawat had no desire or interest in women, and this occurred before they were even married. They married Lawat's daughters because he was a very wealthy man. When he first came to the city, he was extremely wealthy. So not only were they lustful for male flesh, they were also lustful for wealth, which could make for an attractive reason to marry them. Marry them, but not sleep with them. What happened to Lawat's herdsmen? How did Lawat survive untouched by these men of Sodom? Lawat's herdsmen were either destroyed like the innocent strangers who wandered into these cities, or they too became just like these men were, vile and violent. No wonder Lawat was sitting at the gate of the city. He came to Sodom, a very wealthy man, and now it seemed as if he had nothing left, even after being recovered from being kidnapped by the four kings. I said five earlier, right? Forgive me. But he was kidnapped by the four kings. Lawat had the favor of Alahayam upon him because of Abraham's relationship with Alahayam. So when he went to the city, when he divided himself from Abraham and he chose the city of Sodom, the favor of Abraham rested upon Lawat because of his relationship with Alahayam. Alahayam preserved Lawat because of Abraham. He placed a mark upon him that the wicked men of Sodom could not touch him. Then there had been the issue with Lawat's wife, who looked back after leaving Sodom. She turned into a pillar of salt after being warned by the two angels to never look back. Why did she look back? A person will only look back if they feel as if they were missing the place or the person or what have you that they were leaving. She looked back because she loved the place. She was enthralled by the evil lifestyle of Sodom. She wasn't grossed out. She was taken in by it. That's why Alahayam said, Hamashiach, that they planted. They were great at influencing people into their lifestyle. And so she looked back because she left her heart behind in that wicked city. She left, but she really did not want to leave. She wanted to stay. Then there is the sin of the two daughters of Lawat, who laid with their father to produce offspring. Now, this is the part that I wanted to get to. Lawat, if he had gone up to the mountain, this would not have happened. If he had gone straight away up to the mountain. But he said, no, I want to go to another city, the smallest of them all. And when he chose again, this is the second time he chose wickedness instead of righteousness. And that was it. It sealed his fate. Even though afterwards he went up the mountain, it was too late. It was too late. Because now sin had set in. Yes, it was his daughters that made him drunk to lie with them, but it didn't matter. Sin, abomination at that, set in. It was from this act of incest that the Moabites and the Ammonites were produced as a people. an act that Alahayam has not forgotten about, and will punish this offspring of Lawat, for their incestuous curse, and the fact that they too became a wicked people before him. He will not forget them. He will not forget what Lawat did. And he said he will not forget what the Moabites and the Ammonites did to his people when they left Matzorayim. So let's look at Yahweh, the book of Jubilees, chapter 16, verse 5. In this month, Yahweh executed his judgments on Sodom and Gomorrah and Zeboim and all the region of Yaradan, and he burned them with fire and brimstone and destroyed them. And they are destroyed until this day because of all their works. They are wicked and vast sinners, meaning great sinners. And they defiled themselves and committed fornication in their flesh, and work uncleanness on the earth, as I have told you. In like manner, Alahayam will execute judgment on the places where they have done similar to the uncleanness of the Sodomites, and they will suffer a judgment like that of Sodom. But for Lawat, we made an exception, for Alahayam remembered Abaraham and sent him out of the place of the overthrow. And he and his daughters committed sin on the earth, such as had not been on the earth since the days of Adam until this time. For the man had intercourse with his daughters. And we know that's going on today too. We have mothers with sons and daughters with fathers going on today. Evil influence or possession or Nephilim bloodline. Choose one of them. They're all still abominations. It all still leads to abomination. It was commanded and engraved concerning all of his offspring on the heavenly tablets, to remove them and root them out, and to execute judgment on them like the judgment of Sodom, and to leave no offspring of that man on the earth on the day of condemnation. So all these people, the offspring of Moab and Ammon, are going to be wiped off the face of this earth by the ending of the age. And we know who those people are, don't we? Yaradan is Jordan. They're going to be wiped out, completely obliterated, destroyed, annihilated because of this curse that Lawat and his two daughters committed. They did it because of the evil influence of Sodom. We see now that after Lawat left Sodom, that he too was affected by the Sodomites' wickedness. Therefore, we see why Alahayam had to destroy these cities, as they were highly influential when it came to their evil lifestyle. This was what they instilled in anyone living in their cities. Let's look at Yahweh chapter 20, verse 5. He, speaking of Abraham, speaking to his sons, he called all his sons, the sons of Keturah, his sons that he had with Keturah, the son that he had with Hagar, and the other son he had with Sarah. I think there were a total of 8 sons he had. And told them about the judgment on the giants and the judgment on the Sodomites, how they had been judged because of their wickedness and had died because of their fornication and uncleanness and corruption through fornication together. He said, guard yourselves from all fornication and uncleanness and from all pollution of sin, or you will make our name a curse and your whole life a shame, and all your sons to be destroyed by the sword, and you will become like Sodom, and all that is left of you shall be as the sons of Gomorrah, meaning you're going to end up in the lake of fire. That's what fire and brimstone is, and that's where it will be, in the lake of fire. Lake of fire is salt, fire and brimstone, just like Sodom and Gomorrah. Taste of hell they got. A taste waiting for the eternal fire and brimstone. So Abraham was warning his sons, stay away from this uncleanness, from these abominations, from what Sodom and Gomorrah did. Otherwise, you're going to end up just like that. Now, how does this all apply to us today? Now that we know what occurred in the last days of Lawat, if you have noticed, the same wickedness like the Sodomites have taken over the world today, with the Rainbow Coalition leading the way. Perversion of every sort is on the rise once again, and every imagination of the thoughts of men's hearts is continually evil. Not only are there evil acts, but the indoctrination is also being instilled in the innocents and in the ignorant. Today, people are drawn away into the Sodomites' darkness by becoming just as they are, confused and wicked. We don't need to look very far to figure this thing out. We don't need to look far at all. Look at what they're teaching the children in elementary school, 2 daddies and 2 mummies. They're telling children you can identify as anything you want to be. You don't have to be who you were born as. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. It goes deeper and more evil. Because now you got the wicked ones dressing up like demons and reading children's stories at story time in the libraries and exposing themselves at the same time. All this is wicked indoctrination, desensitizing, normalizing. And that's why you got foolish ones around now changing their appearance to look like demons and devils and what have you. And they're walking the street and people are like, how cool, I want to take a picture with you. You look so cool. Can I take a picture with you? Instead of being repulsed by these wicked people. Because the great number of people today are desensitized. And they're just like Lawat's wife. They're favoring these people. They're favoring their wickedness. Because let me tell you something. If you hear about all the different stuff that's going on in the schools today, would you still keep your children in the school system? You will pull them out, right? The teacher will turn up and only got like 1 or 2 children in their classroom. Where are the rest of the children? Oh, the parents decided not to send their children back to their school anymore because of your wickedness. But no, parents are still allowing their children to go to school. Well, we got to move with the times. That's what they will say. If you can't beat them, join them. And so now their children, their minds are being raped mercilessly by these wicked people. And the children are confused. And they're causing them to make decisions when they are not at the right age to make certain decisions. You can't determine who you are until you grow into who you are. You grow in knowledge and you grow physically and spiritually. Less on the spirit because a lot of them are heathens anyway. But you grow in knowledge and through experience and through what mommy and daddy will teach you. But now, with the rise of the media and social media and what have you, Children and the parents are giving children iPads and laptops and smartphones and what have you, and now they have easy access to information that is indoctrinating them, that is easily persuading them away from the light and into the darkness. So now the devils have a field day with them. They're easy targets because they're children with nothing, because their parents gave them nothing to start with. And when I said nothing, I mean some sort of spirituality. They took the Bible out of schools, they took prayers out of schools. So when the Bible and the prayers left, the devil step in. Oh, we want to be fair because there are different religions and so on and so forth. That utter rubbish. They took the Bible out and they took prayers out and even the scriptures out because they know that that was the one thing that kept the darkness somewhat away from people, to give them an opportunity to see the difference between good and evil, right or wrong. But you took that away, see all the corruption now in the schools. And it goes even higher, universities. You send your sweet son and daughter to university, they come back as rebels, indoctrinated by professors and their doctrines and their evil teachings. I have heard so many people say this. I'm not a fan of Christianity, but a lot of Christian parents say that their children that were growing up in the church, from the time they enter into university, when they come back, they're no longer believers. They've become something else. But it's all part of the same pagan system anyway. But I'm just saying that at least because I came up in the church, but the Most High had a hand on me. But you go with what you have until the Most High meets you to show you the way to Him, the true way, the one way. But what these children are doing now, they're tossing it all away. They want no way at all. And they want to go in the way of utter wickedness, like blatant wickedness, even satanic worship. Like I said, I'm not in favor of Christianity because they're all pagans. They worship pagan idols. All right. And this is what is happening today. And we have the influence of music, the influence of the influencers that are given full reign. They're the ones that have the million plus subscribers. Because whatever they produce is being pushed by the technology, by the algorithm. And anything that is wholesome and healthy spiritually, that points a person to the truth, they withhold it. They withhold it. They don't want the truth to get out there because they don't want the hearts and minds of people to be in touch with the truth. Because the truth is like a light, it dispels the darkness. And once you know the truth, you're set free. And they don't want people to be set free. They want them to be in bondage. Their bondage in darkness. Not only, sorry, I read that already. The souls of the innocent, speaking of the children, are being traded like never before. Moral boundaries that we once had have been erased, and now wickedness is running rampant like never before. These days are in fact a combined days is a combined days of Nach, the days of Nach and the days of Lawat, grossly evil. It's combined. It's not of one or the other, it's a combination of both. All right? Just like in the days of Nach, the Sodomites were also indulging in sacrifices. So just like in the days of Nach, where the Nephilim, we know for a fact that they were eating human flesh or even their fellow giants' flesh and drinking blood. So now the Sodomites were doing the same. And they were also indulging in human sacrifices, the drinking of blood and the eating of human flesh. This was what their gods required from them, and this is the reason why Abaraham warned his sons to stay away from these people like the Sodomites. Stay away from them. There is nothing good about them. Nothing whatsoever. Yahweh chapter 20 verse 7. That's the book of Jubilees chapter 20 verse 7. I implore you, my sons, love Alahayam of heaven and cling to all his commandments. Do not, okay, I messed up a word here. Do not go after their idols. I don't know what that word is there. Do not go after their idols and after their ways of uncleanness. And do not make yourselves molten or graven gods. They are empty, and there is no rawak, no spirit in them, for they are work of men's hands, and all who trust in them trust in nothing. Do not serve them, nor worship them, but serve the Most High Alahayam and worship Him continually. And the verse continues on, but I stopped there. So Abraham was warning his sons, stay away from the other nations because of their abominations, because of their pagan worship. They were eating and drinking blood, human sacrifices, committing all kinds of abominable acts. All right? You know what it is to gang rape someone until they die, and then you still keep carrying on, and then you turn around and eat the person and drink their blood. They had no souls in them. That's why there were the Nephilim. And just like these ones that are walking around today that look like people, but they're governing over us, they have no souls either. They just have blackness. And that's why they can do what they are doing without feeling any sort of sympathy or empathy. No compassion, no love. They snicker and laugh and giggle at the reports of when people are hurting or when their agendas and narratives are being successful and people are reacting like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening. You know, they delight in the misery of mankind. It makes them giggle. It makes them laugh because they're not of us. All you gotta do, go back and watch some videos of the Hell's Gate guy and its wife and watch their facial expressions when they were asked certain questions concerning the fate of mankind on the earth. They cannot help but smirk, giggle, laugh, smile. Same thing with some doctors. I saw this and I always thought it was very strange. But these doctors that came out during the height of the demic that we had on the earth, and starting from 2020 and onward. You know, that one that caused the world to shut down? Yes, that one. And he had doctors coming out. There was this one particular one that I used to listen to because it appeared that this particular person was trying to get the truth out there about what it was really going on. But one thing I noticed about them is that even when they were talking about what they discovered in the vials, you know, they got their hands on some of the vials of the toxin that they were giving people. And when they started to describe the things that they found inside the solution, inside these vials, it started to laugh. And it caught itself. And it said, "Oh, I'm only laughing because I'm so grieved by what I had discovered. When I first discovered it, I cried." But now it's laughing. It doesn't make any sense. It didn't show any sense. It didn't show any sense of concern or remorse or deeply troubled by what was really going on. It was reporting facts. But what the devil has, what these people are that have brought about certain agendas on this earth and narratives, what we have to be aware of, there's something called controlled opposition. Controlled opposition will seem as if they are against what the wicked, evil people are doing on this earth by exposing what they're doing. But what they're actually doing is they are exposing a little bit of what is being done and said, but in a controlled fashion, to get you now to trust in this person and believe this person when they come to you with more information. Because this same person was letting people know that once you take the toxin, you can go and lie in a bathtub filled with water and you put all these different chemicals in there and it's going to draw out the poison. It's a lie from the pit of hell. And this is the same doctor, it's a woman, that discovered that in all of the vials, they found a parasite that cannot be easily killed. Anyways, this just goes to show how wicked these people are, that they try to pretend that they have nice, that, okay, let me start over. They are so wicked that they want to cover both sides of the coin. They have the good cop, they call it the good cop and the bad cop. Because people are going to start searching for the truth, right? So they might as well have their own version of the truth out there, but in a controlled fashion. And that way, they can still bring some level of deception, sneak it in somewhere, somehow, or eventually derail people like they did with this doctor. I stopped following her. I mean, I wasn't a subscriber or anything, but I would just look forward to listening to what this creature had to say. And it was not only her, there was a whole bunch of them, a whole bunch of these doctors that were so-called spilling the truth, exposing the liars. And then someone did a research on them, each and every one of them, because all of them that used to have smirks on their faces. I'm like, why are they smirking? But what they're saying is so disturbing. Why would you be smirking? Because of the delight that they were receiving from what they were reporting. Someone did an expose on them and started to dig into the history of these same doctors and found out that they were all, every single one of them, were all connected to the female side of the Masons. Because you know, they have the male side and they have the Masons, talking about the Freemasons. And then you have the female version of that, the secret societies. And each and every one of these doctors were part of them, were in their groups. And that's when I realized, okay, my instinct about these people, because it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Why are you smirking? Why are you laughing? Even the excuse, oh, I laugh because I'm so bewildered by all this stuff that is happening. I'm so troubled. Well, a person that is troubled would not laugh. They would not laugh, they would not giggle, they would not smirk, they would not smile. But these doctors were smirking and smiling and laughing, just like Hell's Gate. They can't help it because they are Nephilim wearing a lab coat with all these titles and letters after their names. Unbelievable. Today we are seeing gross wickedness increasing exponentially on the earth because the Nephilim bloodline is in full control on the earth. They are in high places governing over us today. And so evil laws are being passed in support of their evil agendas to pervert, to corrupt, to make people abominable, and even to destroy lives if they could. When you see them starting to pass laws that would take away the rights of people, and we saw this it started to happen with the Toxon. They were signing documents behind closed doors, making a decision that if people don't take it, they can't work, they can't travel, they can't do this, they can't do that. Forcing people now to take their poison. And the reason why this was allowed is because they had the right people in the right places. They had their own kind in the right places. They have successfully dumbed down the masses throughout the generations, through the educational systems, the religious systems, and the social systems, until a generation arrived who believe everything they were told and who will believe everything that they are told. It's both past and present and future, and question nothing. So the people today, the dumbed down ones, they accept all the narratives and they question nothing. I remember when that man that was the spokesperson for the CDC, you know who I'm talking about, was telling you all these different things about this fake disease. Telling people if you wear that facial covering, you'll be protected. If you take the toxin, then life can go back to normal. All these lies they were telling people, and people believed them and followed. So if you stay 6 feet apart, you will be safe. If you don't hug or kiss someone or touch them or what have you, you will be safe. And yet they were doing the opposite of what they were telling the masses to do. That's how you know that people were dumbed down and indoctrinated in lies. They were so indoctrinated they couldn't even see the lies. That afterwards, then they said nothing can stop this disease. You have to keep taking more toxin every 6 months. When they said, once you take it, you're safe. And the toxin, you know what I'm talking about, the jibby jab, the poison for the fake disease. The only reason why you don't see it happening or carrying on today is because Alahayam brought an ending to it for now. They can't go so far and no further. They've been hinting at another one that's coming, but they can't do anything about it. One after the other, they keep coming up with different names and telling people that they need to mask up again. And people is like, forget it, never again. A lot of people now are willing to lose their jobs, are willing to lose their livelihoods. They're not going back down that road again because they have learned their lesson. Because some people still realize the lies that they were told. They believed in the beginning, but then they started to wake up and realize that these people were telling lies. They keep moving the goalpost. Every time they came on the news, they moved the goalposts. Oh, if you do this, this, and this, then life will go back to normal. People started to do what they say. Then they moved the goalposts. Now we have to say, I'm sorry, but you have to do this, this, and this in order to get back to normal. And people started to do what they said to do. And they moved the goalpost again. And again. And again. And again. And then finally people was like, forget it. Enough is enough. All the lies, everything that they said were all lies. And nothing made any sense. Not even on a medical level made sense. Even if you have basic biology knowledge and the things that they were saying, it would not make sense if you had your thinking cap on. But if you come under their, not just their indoctrination, but it was a web of darkness through witchcraft that they spread over this earth. And you just got to believe one of the things that they say in order to be drawn into that darkness. Then you're lost. You're not going to see anything. And that's why they were able to tell people, hey, stay away from these kinds of people because they're anti, you know what? They're anti-toxin. And they call us the enemies because we were speaking the truth and telling them the truth. They didn't want to hear it. And they would come right out and say, we don't want to hear it. We don't want to know. Keep it to yourself. Friends, friends that have known one another for years. Friends, family members that have known one another for a long time. Well, obviously, if they're family, they know each other for a long time, right? But I'm talking about friends. Grew up together, went to school together, went to college together. And now you're approaching this friend and say, hey, friend, you know what? Don't believe the lies because of X, Y, and Z. Oh, no, 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 no. Don't come to me with that because I don't believe you. I believe them. Strangers, they believe. The liars, they believe. But they didn't believe the truth. Because they were already suckered into the darkness. All right. The beehive mentality is at work. allowing people to be easily persuaded because others believe it to be so, especially their living idols. And their living idols would be the basketball players, the actors, the actresses, the politicians, what have you, famous people. If the famous people are saying it, then it is true. And if you notice, a lot of the actors and actresses, the entertainers or what have you, come out and say, well, I got this, I caught it, and it is terrible. It is so terrible. I feel so weak. I feel so sick. I feel this, I feel that. I can't wait for them to find a cure. All right? Or, I've been tested positive. Oh, woe is me. I need to be protected against this thing. I'm going to quarantine myself to protect others from me. In the meantime, they gone partying, gone to dinners, gone, gone on trips and all kind of stuff. And this is what the educational system, even the religious system, all the different systems that they have in place now are to teach people to have this beehive mentality. It is forming people's minds that if others are doing it, we're going to do it too. If others are not doing it, even if it's the opposite for my own wife or husband or children, I'm not going to do what they're doing. I'm only going to do what the greater majority of people on the earth are doing. And then they make a decision to do what the greater majority is doing, and someone who is in the know comes to tell them, hey, friend, hey, family member, don't do that. You're killing yourself. Oh, no, 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 you're my enemy. Stay away from me. You're my enemy now because you're going against the system that is trying to protect us. We were warned about you, so keep away. That's the beehive mentality. You can't think for yourself. You can only think as far as what others tell you to think and how to think, when to think it. Beehive. I think I spoke about this, the Borgs, and this um, mixed race. And when I say mixed, they were mixed with half machine, half people. They were called the Borgs. I think it was short for cyborgs. And they were a race that infiltrated and indoctrinated, right? And somehow this one particular weird race of people stayed with me all these years because I don't watch this garbage anymore. But I used to watch it when I was younger, you know. You get fascinated by space and planets and people because you were, dumbed down in those days. But until this Ruach HaKadosh awaken you to the reality, right? But this one particular race traveled in a cube. And we already know the cube is symbolic of Saturn, which is a pagan god, right? And this race of cyborgs called themselves the Borg. They had one mind, one thought, one voice. And if one of them thought anything other than what the others are thinking, they're sought out, brought back in, and they are reprogrammed. All right? And I always thought it was fascinating. And it stayed with me. Until now, I understand why it stayed with me. Because the Most High wanted me to understand that this is what they have planning for people. And this is what is coming. It is true to the half machine and half people. A thought hit me this morning. Remember how we used to love watching $6 Million Man and the same thing with the woman and so on and so forth. They were already indoctrinating us way back in the 70s about what was coming in this era, how they're going to merge man with machine, contaminate them. And even though we had a covering over us because we used to pray, we used to worship in schools. So we had a special covering over us that even though we watched these things and were entertained by them, we, for the most part, not everyone, were not drawn into that darkness to think that this thing is actually cool to have or to become. Because we had the hand of the Most High, the favor of Alahayam upon us. You see how he protected Nach and his family? You see how he protected Lawat? Well, we have been protected. The ones that are awakened and walking the straight and narrow path in righteousness and in holiness, we have been protected because we are the ones that will be regathered. All right, so that story stayed with me, and now I understand it. Beehive mentality. The Nephilim bloodline have done their extensive homework on us through psychological experiments. And now they know how heathens think and behave. They know how we think and we behave and how we will react to certain situations. But what they have not counted on are the tribes of Yashraal being awakened, starting with the southern kingdom. They have not counted on that. They have not counted on the fact that Alahayam, Yahweh, has bestowed upon his chosen his favor. That we can only go so far in their indoctrination, but no further. Because when they try to push us to go further, we start questioning. A question comes into our spirit, comes from Waraq. Why are they saying this? Why are they doing this? And when you ask a question, he is more than happy to answer it. That's what happened when I was in the church. I started asking questions. I couldn't figure out why things were happening in certain ways. I'll give you an example, a quick example. Like the communion. I couldn't figure it out. I said, why are we doing communion every week? I thought communion was supposed to represent the Passover meal. Or, supposed to represent the flesh and the blood of Hamashiach, which is like the Passover. Well, symbolic of the Passover. And it was done once a year. Why are we doing it every week? They couldn't answer, but they changed it from once a week to once a month. I kid you not. And it stayed with me, and then other questions started to arise inside of me. And I would ask a question, then I was called a troublemaker because I asked questions that they did not want to answer. They didn't even want to look into it. This is what they were told to do, how to do it. I'm speaking about the pastors now. And they're going to do it this way until they die. But that was the favor of Alahayam upon his people when they start to ask questions. And when things start to make even less sense, then you feel, you know what? I don't want to be here any longer. I'm out of here. The days of Lawat shows us what can happen to someone who compromised for the sake of wealth. You can compromise for the sake of a husband that is not of your lineage, or a wife who is not of your lineage. You can compromise for a job. You can compromise for anything. Anything that causes you to compromise your stand for righteousness and holiness is of the enemy. Alahayam will not cause you to compromise your stand in His word, to live in righteousness and in holiness, to break His commandments. He will never do that. So anything that comes our way that causes us to compromise our belief, our faith, our walk, is of the devil, the same spirits that roam in this earth, led by the Satans and the fallen angels. Lawat lost it all, including his wife, and now, according to the Apocrypha, his entire lineage will also be destroyed. It's also in the Bible too. It's in the scriptures. We're going to see that in part 5. Therefore, the lesson for us today: remain steadfast in our faith and in our worship to Alahayam. Do not choose what may look good to our eyes, but indeed it is corruption overlaid with what may appear good. Because once corruption lays hold on us, it will continue to erode every ounce of goodness we may have stored up. Remember, Alahayam has given us the will to choose, and He already knows who will choose His path and who will choose the evil path. Nothing comes as a surprise to Him. Most of what occurred in the days of Nach returned in the days of Lawat, to show us that the same bloodline was at work both times. There were no recorded giants in these fallen cities, talking about in the Sodom and Gomorrah and Zeboim and Admah and Zeboim. But by this time, some of the Nephilim had fully adapted to have the stature of regular people, just like today. A lot of them that you see on the television, on the screens, where have you? They look like normal people, but they have the bloodline. Just judge them by their actions. I know people say, oh, you shouldn't judge. You know what? You judge their actions, right? To see whether they are working righteousness or unrighteousness. And then you will have your answer. Easy. What gave them away was their insatiable, bloodthirsty appetite for intercourse, and not regular intercourse with women either, and their abominations as well. Today, as we are comparing our days with those of these two events in our history, there are direct parallels that cannot be overlooked, because of the same bloodline is at work even today. Alahayam destroyed the Sodomites and the other cities before they could progress to the abominations of splicing genetic material. They would have gotten there. They would have started to build their own people. However, they were building up to it, and so Alahayam burnt their efforts down with fire and brimstone, never to rise from those ashes ever again. Yet the Nephilim bloodline lived on. Lawat's days were not time for them to do their worst. Today is their time to do their utter worst. Regardless of who this Nephilim bloodline is, who this Nephilim bloodline is, or these Nephilim bloodline are, whichever, and what agendas and narratives they are working on the masses, we, the people of Alahayam, His chosen, have hope as long as we continue worshiping Him. Remember, in part 3, we talked about Noah's Ark, Noah's Ark, and the Ark was representative, back in Noah's day, it was representative of his presence, because the Ark preserved Noah and his family and the animals. And it is symbolic for us today as well, because it represents the presence of Alahayam that preserves us and protects us. not only from his judgment, but from the wickedness as well. And the only way that we can be safe is when we enter into his presence. We will be protected, just like Nach and his family, and just like Lawat and his family, from the destruction from Alahayam, which always ensues. There's judgment coming. Alahayam is getting ready to judge this entire world and everyone in it. Now the question is, when he comes to judge you, will he judge you and find you righteous, or will he judge you and find you unrighteous? We have a choice now to make, and a path to follow. And I know earlier I was talking about when people go and marry other people. You marry other nations. You're going to see that in part 5. You marry other nations and you break his commandment. He said, don't marry into the other nations on this earth. Stay within your people. And the reason why he said that is because a lot of these nations, if not all of them, by this time now, have been infiltrated with Nephilim bloodline. You don't know who's who, who's what. And they don't only come with corruption in their bloodstream, but they come with their corruption, with their deeds, their evil deeds, their evil worship. And they will draw you away from Alahayam. That's why he said, don't even go there. It is better never to marry than to go and hook up with one of these other people from the nation. I don't care even if they won't want to be one of us. Because you know, you got a lot of them out there trying to walk and talk and dress like the Hebrew Israelite camps. You could never be one of us like that. You think it's all about dressing? You think it's all about calling on Ahaya? You think that's all it is about? All right? And of course, the Hebrew Israelite camps welcome them in, because now they can use an excuse that they can marry into these other nations, call them us. Oh, this person is from Puerto Rico, so therefore they are of our lineage. Oh, this person is from Hawaii, so therefore they are of our lineage. All nonsense. All utter nonsense. All right? If they don't look like us, then they're not us. And even the ones that look like us, a lot of them aren't us. You can have people that looking contrary to how we look and say that they are our people. Like, seriously, you hate yourself that much? Come on now. All right. Let's see where we have left off. Okay, we need to heed the words and the warnings of our forefathers and even Hamashiach. We need to heed them. Let's look at Yahawasha'o, which is the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 14. Now therefore fear Yahweh and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood, meaning the other side of the river, which is speaking of Yaradan, and in Matzarayam, and serve Yahweh. And if it seem evil unto you to serve Yahweh, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell. Talking about the same, okay, that was in part 5, talking about the same 7 nations that Alahayam told Yashraal to drive out of the land, the promised land that he gave to them. So I'm getting my studies slightly mixed up, not too much, but I kind of remembered. But the gods of the Amorites will be the gods of the Girgashites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hittites, and the Hivites. Those Hittites, right? So those are the ones in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve Yahweh. All right? That should be the thoughts on our hearts. As for me, not just me, but me and my house, me and my family, including if, well, in Yahweh days, he had servants and what have you. So that's all inclusive of his house. But today, we don't have servants. It's just us and our family. All right? As for me and my family, we will serve Yahweh. That should be the cry of our heart. Okay? So that's the ending of part 4. And we will look at part 5 next. We're going to look at the Nephilim. And we're going to go into a little deeper about this fallen race of giants and see what they're all about. So we're going to end with the blessing for Yashwa'al, taken from Madabar chapter 6, verses 24 to 26. And that's the book of Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 to 26. Yabarakat Yahweh wa ya Shamarak. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. Ya'ar Yahweh panayo alayak wa yahanak. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and have favor upon you. Yasha'a Yahweh panayo alayak wa yasham lak shalawat. May Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace. And now we're going to recite the command that we are told to recite when we lie down, when we get up, when we go in, when we go out, and when we come in. Taken from the Abaraham chapter 6, verses 4 and 5, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 and 5. Shama o Yashwa'al, Yahweh Alahayam, Yahweh Achad, wa Ahabaf Yahweh Alahayam, Bakal Babak, wa Bakal Napashat, wa Bakal Ma'adak. Hear, O Yashwa'al, Yahweh our Alahayam is one Yahweh, and you shall love Yahweh your Alahayam with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And with that, I will say, Shalom, Shalom. All praises to the Most High. Abaya.